let's talk about Coca-Cola, a brand so American it's practically a bald eagle in liquid form. For generations it's been more than just a drink. It's a symbol of national pride, nostalgia, and the American way of life. For decades it's been the nation's sugary, caffeinated lifeblood, deeply woven into American culture. From backyard barbecues to ball games, Coca-Cola has been there, a fizzy companion to countless American memories. So when Coca-Cola announced in June 2025 that it was moving a significant chunk of its American operations abroad, the country was stunned. The news hit like a bolt from the blue, leaving many to wonder what could possibly force such an iconic company to make this move. This wasn't a minor reshuffle, it was a seismic shift. Production lines halted and the future of thousands of American jobs suddenly hung in the balance. The news sent shockwaves through the media and public, turning a beloved brand into a symbol of economic upheaval. Social media exploded with outrage, disbelief, and questions about what this meant for the country. The reason? Tariffs, specifically the steep new ones on imported steel and aluminum imposed by the Trump administration. These tariffs were meant to protect American industry, but they had unintended consequences. Ironically, the policy meant to protect American industry was now driving one of its icons out. The very heart of American manufacturing was being squeezed by the rising costs of raw materials. Coca-Cola's statement was full of corporate jargon, but the message was clear. The cost of aluminum for their cans had skyrocketed. The company faced a tough choice: absorb the costs, pass them on to consumers, or move operations elsewhere. Faced with absorbing costs, raising prices, or moving, Coca-Cola chose to relocate. It was a decision that would ripple through communities, affecting workers, suppliers, and even local economies. This wasn't just business, it was a cultural gut punch and a political statement. The move sparked protests, heated debates, and a sense of loss across the nation. The move ignited fierce debate, with everyone from Wall Street to Atlanta factory workers weighing in. Politicians, economists, and everyday Americans all had something to say about what this meant for the future. Coca-Cola, once the poster child for American optimism, was now saying it was too expensive to do business at home. The message was clear. Even the most iconic brands aren't immune to global economic forces. The tariffs had turned a can of Coke into a symbol of a much larger economic war. What was once a simple beverage now represented the complex battles of international trade and policy. The company's decision challenged the narrative that tariffs would bring back American jobs. Instead, it raised tough questions about who really benefits from these policies. Instead, it exposed the deep contradictions in America's economic strategy, forcing the nation to confront the real costs of protectionism and the future of its most cherished brands. So, what's a tariff and why is it causing chaos? Let's break it down because this is one of those economic headaches that affects way more than just politicians and CEOs. Simply put, a tariff is a tax on imported goods, meant to make foreign products pricier and encourage buying American. It's a tool governments use to try to protect local industries from overseas competition. In 2025, the Trump administration slapped a 25% tariff on imported steel and aluminum, and a whopping 50% on tin mill steel for cans. These numbers aren't just big, they're game changers for entire industries. The goal? Protect U.S. metal producers and save American jobs. On paper, it sounds like a win for American manufacturing and workers. But the economy isn't that simple. Helping one sector can hurt many others. When you pull one lever, you might accidentally break another. Companies like Coca-Cola, which use massive amounts of aluminum, suddenly faced soaring costs. For them, every cent added to the price of metal means millions more in expenses. U.S. can makers import nearly 80% of their tin mill steel because domestic supply can't meet demand. There simply isn't enough made in America to go around. So, American companies are forced to pay high tariffs on materials they can't even source at home. It's like being penalized for something you can't control. It's a lose-lose, punished for relying on imports with no domestic alternative. Businesses are squeezed from both sides and the pressure is relentless. The result? Higher costs for every company that uses metal, from car makers to soup brands. These costs eventually trickle down to consumers, raising prices on everyday goods. Coca-Cola's business model wobbled as aluminum prices jumped. Even global giants aren't immune to the ripple effects of tariffs. The tariffs, meant as a targeted fix, ended up being a sledgehammer to the entire manufacturing sector. Instead of a precise solution, it created widespread disruption. Instead of protecting jobs, they created a new set of headaches for American industry. leaving workers and business owners alike searching for answers. This isn't just about pricier Coke. Tariffs on steel and aluminum are shaking the entire food and beverage industry. Every canned product on supermarket shelves, from soup to pet food, is now caught in the crossfire. Companies like Conagra and Campbell's rely on imported packaging materials, facing steep new taxes. The Consumer Brands Association warns tariffs could raise canned food prices by up to 15% and threaten 20,000 jobs. These aren't just numbers, their livelihoods at risk. Even iconic brands like Campbell's are feeling the squeeze, with razor-thin margins threatened by rising costs. Companies must now choose absorb the hit, raise prices, or move operations. Tariffs don't just hit the end product, they disrupt the entire supply chain from miners to truck drivers. What was meant to help one industry is causing collateral damage across many others. The result? Higher prices, lost jobs, and a slow-motion crisis for American consumers. The architect of these tariffs, Donald Trump, didn't take Coca-Cola's move lightly. He saw the company's decision as a direct challenge to his economic vision and a personal affront to his leadership. The announcement was a PR disaster, with a quintessential American company blaming his policy for leaving. News outlets ran with the story, and social media erupted with outrage and disbelief. Trump's response was swift and loud, painting Coca-Cola as disloyal and ungrateful. He took to Twitter and the airwaves, rallying his supporters and calling out what he saw as corporate cowardice. The debate quickly shifted from economics to patriotism, fueling a political firestorm. Commentators and politicians weighed in, turning a business decision into a national controversy. Supporters saw Coke's move as corporate betrayal, while critics called it proof of failed policy. The country seemed split down the middle, with both sides digging in. The incident exposed a deep divide. Some believe tariffs are needed to rebuild American manufacturing, no matter the pain. They argue that short-term losses are worth long-term gains for American workers. Others see the policy as reckless, punishing companies and exporting jobs. For them, the tariffs are a blunt tool that hurts more than it helps, driving businesses away. For one side, Coca-Cola's exit is a selfish act. For the other, it's a predictable result of bad economics. The arguments spilled from newsrooms to dinner tables, dividing friends and families. The fizzy drink became a stand-in for a much bigger fight about America's future. Suddenly, a bottle of Coke was more than just a beverage, it was a symbol of national identity and economic anxiety. The fallout showed just how personal and political economic policy can become. Everyday Americans found themselves caught in the crossfire, debating what loyalty and prosperity really mean. In the end, the Coca-Cola saga became a proxy war over loyalty, jobs, and America's place in the world. It was no longer just about soda or tariffs, but about the soul of the nation. The debate rages on with no easy answers in sight. As the dust settles, one thing is clear. The story of Coca-Cola and the tariffs is far from over. The Cola Wars, Pepsi took a different path, and it paid off. While Coca-Cola sounded the alarm and moved operations, PepsiCo stayed quiet and weathered the storm. Pepsi's secret? A more diversified product mix, including snacks and a heavier reliance on plastic bottles. With fewer aluminum cans in its lineup, Pepsi was less exposed to the tariff shock. This gave Pepsi a sudden edge, allowing it to hold prices steady while Coke struggled. The difference came down to supply chain strategy. Pepsi's flexibility became its greatest asset. As Coca-Cola faced tough choices, Pepsi could capture market share. Of course, Pepsi isn't immune to tariffs, but its diversified approach softened the blow. The lesson, adaptability, and risk management matter more than size in a volatile world. In 2025's tariff turmoil, Pepsi's planning turned crisis into opportunity. Sometimes, the quiet competitor wins the round. Behind the headlines, real people pay the price for corporate moves. When Coca-Cola shifts operations, it's not just factories moving, it's thousands of jobs lost. Communities like Atlanta, built around Coke, face economic devastation. The promise of tariffs was to bring jobs home, not send them away. But multinationals answer to shareholders, not slogans. When costs rise, they look elsewhere, leaving workers caught in the crossfire. The skills lost in a Coke plant aren't easily replaced by new jobs in steel mills. For many, the promise of new opportunities rings hollow. The tragedy policies meant to protect some workers end up hurting others. Every economic decision has a human face, and a real, lasting impact. As soon as the Coca-Cola news broke, experts lined up with wildly different takes. Some warned of disaster higher prices, lost jobs, and a self-inflicted wound on the economy. They argued that tariffs make U.S. manufacturers less competitive and hurt more than they help. Others downplayed the impact, saying the cost increase per can is tiny and big companies can absorb it. For them, Coca-Cola's move is a political play, not an economic necessity. This camp believes short-term pain is worth the long-term goal of rebuilding American industry. They point to stable share prices as proof the panic is overblown. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Tariffs have real costs, but the full impact is still unfolding. The Coca-Cola saga is a case study in how complex and divisive economic policy can be. In the end, the debate is far from settled. The tariff story has an environmental twist. To dodge aluminum costs, Coca-Cola considered shifting from cans to plastic bottles. While cheaper, plastic is a recycling nightmare. Most ends up as pollution. Coke is already the world's top plastic polluter, and this move would make things worse. Tariffs meant to help industry are now encouraging more plastic waste. It's a classic case of unintended consequences, economic policy undermining environmental progress. Consumers may soon face a grim choice: pay more for cans or buy plastic that pollutes for centuries. Sometimes fixing one problem creates another, even bigger one. So, are tariffs helping or hurting American workers? Supporters say tough measures are needed to rebuild industry, even if it means short-term pain. Critics see a policy that punishes companies, raises prices, and exports jobs. The Coca-Cola fiasco shows how messy and contradictory economic nationalism can be. For some, it's a necessary battle for America's future. For others, it's a self-inflicted wound. The story is a cautionary tale about unintended consequences in a global economy. It raises tough questions about what it means to be an American company, and who pays the price when politics and business collide. Are we protecting workers, or just a chosen few? With Coca-Cola leaving, it feels like we've shot ourselves in the foot. And ironically, we probably did it with tariffed steel.